Asset risk management has become a matter of high urgency in mining, oil and gas, heavy industry, and manufacturing. Well, welcome to Risk Radar. Today, we're exploring technology and innovation in asset risk management. Whether you're a risk analyst, a plant manager, or a chief risk officer, this podcast is for you. Our factories, facilities, plants, and machines are falling apart faster than we can fix them. Outdated tech is guzzling energy, not to mention the looming legal nightmares of failing to meet regulatory standards. So if you're wondering why this should matter to you, consider this. Experts estimate that more than half of total losses are avoidable and preventable. Our discussion today might just help you avoid falling into that statistic. Technology and innovation in asset risk management next on Risk Radar. Barry Mitchell. On our last program, Emerging Issues in Asset Risk Management, we learned that one of the critical issues facing businesses is access to talent. Now, since COVID, remote work and remote workers has been a sore point, should we say, to many companies, but actually remote work is perhaps a savior in this case in managing risk.
It's a good point, Brian. Realistically, when you think about the days of old of a plant manager walking around a facility, utilizing a stethoscope to listen to a piece of equipment operating and running, touching it with their hand or something of that nature, that's not being utilized anymore. We don't do that. There's a lot of technology out there. Along with COVID, it's kind of forced it to even move away from that even further, and it's catapulted us into even much more efficient technology that provides us with 24/7 monitoring of all of our critical components and assets, which is a huge advantage to many, many organizations.
And this actually is your area of specialization, Andy. Maybe tell us about, this is about sensors, I'm guessing, and the Internet of Things. I mean, are we there yet?
We are there. And we have to be there, because I completely agree with Barry. Gone are the days where we have the general manager that could open up his office door and tell you by the way he felt the plant running what was wrong. Now we have a wide variety of sensors that can be remotely operated. Really interesting acoustic sensors, really interesting sensors for gas monitoring that are worn, even cameras that are worn by workers. So we have a really big cornucopia of IoT connected devices that enable remote work to happen. They enable us to actually monitor, measure, and manage those activities. And we have to because of the lack of resources, qualified resources, to be able to do that. Real-time condition monitoring, we can do that now on almost every single component in a factory. With very, very specialized tools. So again, across the world, there's just a wide variety of sensors to be able to enable this type of activity. Right down to telemetry and remote management. How fast is something moving? Is it generating errors today, right now? Looking at trucks, haul trucks, for example. How fast is it moving? How much weight does it have on it? Are there any errors that are coming from the Modbus of the vehicle? Is the vehicle talking to me and telling me what's wrong? So we have a really massive tool set to be able to leverage at our fingertips today.
One of the ideas that I love around this real-time tracking of the environment that we're operating in is that it removes risk management from a spreadsheet in an office to actually really what's happening on the ground right now, enabling people to make real-time decisions and perhaps even predicting what's coming next.
Absolutely. You see even remote worker management. And I think 10 years ago in the movies, you'd see those blinking red dots like in a science fiction movie. Today, that's a reality. We've got this device in our pocket that's usually a phone that can give you that sub-millimeter accuracy now, which is amazing. All the new phones that are coming out have GPS built into them where we can send messages via satellite even when we're outside of cell phone coverage. So you have that combined with things like Starlink, SpaceX, to be able to connect assets any place, planes, trains, automobiles above the Arctic Circle or in Antarctica. The cost for access has come down so much, and the utility of all of those pieces for a business are amazing. I think it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is a game changer for sure. Now, Anne Chalmers, you've got decades of experience working with risk and risk management. I'm just wondering, as you look back over your career, how might have technology changed some of the outcomes that you experienced? I mean, I'm thinking sort of some of the disasters. Bhopal comes to mind. More recently, Red Hill. What would the game changer technology have been for those situations?
Well, Brian, I believe that the technology that we have today, and definitely what Andy referred to earlier, and the sensors and the types of industries that they could play a big role in, for sure, some of those devastating losses around the world would have been avoided.
Yeah. So how do you think that tech can make a difference in that moment, that one moment with once things can go one way or they can go the other way?
Well, you've got advance warning in certain cases, and it allows you time to mobilize. And so let's say there was even a portion of a disaster, it may not be as large or as widespread with the technology that we have.
So, okay, I think we can all agree that technology is the answer in many cases, along with awareness within an organization. So why don't we turn now to the latest buzzword that everyone's talking about, and that's AI and machine learning. It's no exaggeration, Andy, to say that AI transforms how companies operate and how they manage their assets, presumably. How can we leverage data to make more informed decisions?
Maybe I'll start by talking about a first principles issue, which is the responsible use of energy. Okay. It takes an incredible amount of energy to run AI compute. So we have to be specific in our application of AI to the results that we want to get out of data. And I'll be really, really specific to risk management data. So when we collect information from the shop floor, we collect sensors, we want to be specific in how we analyze that data and how we apply AI to generate the results that we want. In this case, predictive or proactive insights to asset failures. So I think a challenge for the industry is being really specific in how they're applying the technology to the problem that they're trying to solve.
There's also an aspect of cost, isn't there? Because, I mean, you touched on it, the amount of energy that's required. I mean, this stuff is going to get more and more expensive, isn't it?
It's going to become incredibly expensive. And I think the cost for consuming it is going to show up really quickly in your balance sheet. Very quickly, we're going to go, our compute costs are rising too fast. We've got to take and peel back, why are we using the compute? What are we using it for? And how do we be, again, very specific about the application of AI with that compute power to solve a problem?
So really just taking the bite that you need, not finishing the whole plate, in other words.
We've been at a buffet. Right. Filling ourselves for the last couple of years. Everybody's been very, very excited about the practical usefulness of, or maybe I would say uselessness of talking to a machine. Now we need to be really specific that we kind of got hooked on it, but we need to be really specific because the costs are going to increase greatly and we have to be very managed about using those resources.
Yeah, careful and intentional. Let's get into big data and analytics because that's sort of where it all starts, isn't it? How do you use data to make better decisions?
I'll talk about it specifically around asset risk management. The more visibility that we have into a site, i.e. the more sensors that we have connected, gives us a broader view or a greater resolution of problems that could come up. So us being able to analyze that data, look at what I would call the heartbeat of the operation, and just spot anomalies is the key thing that we're trying to do. I think when it comes to big data and analytics, we've overcomplicated things for the operators that need really simple solutions. So my first general manager that I worked with in industrial operations said, Andy, it has to be as simple as crayon on a cocktail napkin or people won't use it. So we've always taken that kind of guidance to make sure that all of the solutions that we put in place are dead simple. IoT, big data, analytics, very complex topics. For an operator, they want to know something really simple. Especially on the maintenance side, is there a deviation to baseline? Is there an anomaly? Do I need to react? And that's so important when it comes to asset risk management as well, is just being able to spot a deviance to the baseline.
Because you don't want to have to be wasting time or bandwidth on trying to figure out the data in front of you. You need to have a clear indicator of what's happening so you can now change your stance. Am I taking action or is everything fine, right?
You're spot on, Brian. The next step in the evolution here is agent-based data. agency data. So it's pushing the answer that you need to you. So I think we're going to go beyond dashboards and actually, how is the data talking to you? I need it to tell me what it observed over the last day, 2 days, week, 30 days, and tell me the actionable insight. What do I need to do now? Right. So the practical use of AI around big data is going to be peeling back the layers to give the manager exactly what they need to make a decision before they run into the issue.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, because one of the things I find so fascinating about this aspect of risk management is the predictive aspect, looking into the future so you can get your ducks lined up or get your team ready for a failure or a maintenance that's got to happen. Tell us a little more about how does that crystal ball happen?
I want to be specific around AI and machine learning. Most of the stuff that we do in predictive maintenance is about machine learning. It's about understanding the baseline operation of a specific piece of equipment, right, and then understanding what deviations happen within that baseline. So once we've gathered a large enough data set, we can get better at predicting when those anomalies are going to occur. That's keeping it as simple as possible. Yeah. There's a lot of tech that goes into building that machine learning capability and building those algorithms, but we need to gather a really good baseline set of data that's quite deep before we can get to the predictive insights. And I don't want viewers to walk away with predictive maintenance is a crystal ball. Yeah. Like it's just going to tell you, at mile 72 on Highway 1, your car is going to break down. It doesn't work that way.
Well, we've spoken a little bit about what it means on the front line, being able to make decisions in the moment, quickly, with easy access to information. Barry, if I can turn to you, what about in the C-suite? How can we use this data to predict, or let me say, enhance our decision making in the C-suite?
Well, I think a lot of it, again, speaks to what Andy had referred to, is the AI gathers vast amount of data to make rather quick calculation of things. So from a C-suite perspective, there could be some critical business decisions that need to be made immediately and quickly, but as a C-level executive, you want to make sure you're making a clearly informed decision. So as an example, if I have a situation where I've got a land situation, that I've got an unstable land, or I've got an unstable slope or something of that nature that could lead to flooding issue, it could lead to a release of contaminated substances that could affect a significant community. If I know from the AI, the intelligence and everything else, can I comfortably and confidently say, I need to go put a piece of equipment here, and I need to put a person in that piece of equipment to be able to do this, because I can prevent that from happening. So that's something that you really need to trust the technology with and the data that's coming out of that. And eventually that's where this is going to be leading to.
Yeah. And I wonder, on the front line, as we've been saying, the technicians who are working at the rock face of the business, if you will, they have access to certain kinds of information. But now I think for the first time, the people in the office blocks and the office towers are also accessing the same information in real time. How does that affect what's happening around risk management?
Well, I think it's an excellent way to even out the communications as that, let's say, the people in the office block are seeing what the people at the rock face are seeing, but it also allows for far more effective communications, because you're eliminating layers of management in some cases. And the message, it's like being in a circle with the children. One person says something to the next person. By the time it goes fully around, it's not quite right. But it allows immediate response, especially with technology and the AI that's been gathered, the data, and then the response time. I think we can see a rapid decrease in the length of time it takes to deal with.
So it's a win-win, isn't it? I mean, you can make a decision in the moment on the front line, but also at the C-suite, it's all happening now, and you can make a decision. I mean, it's a game changer. I mean, we keep saying it, but it really is.
It is. It's significant.
So we have this idea of technology driving change and giving us access to information more quickly. But how does this work sort of at scale? Because many of the companies that we're talking about who might be watching the show, they have a global imprint. So Andy, maybe I'll throw this over to you. How does it work around scalability, the technology piece?
Scale is a magic word for the technology industry, right? Everybody wants to reach scale. Yeah. And what we have access to now, especially with things like Starlink, is scale connectivity. Right. So we can be connected any place on the face of the planet, right? So planes, trains, automobiles, out in the middle of the ocean, in the Arctic Circle, in Antarctica, we can have connected devices.
That's very new, though. I mean, that really is. It's what, it's 5 years old or something like that, maybe 10 at the most?
Still emerging today, right? Like we're now doing what's called IoT from space. So now we have small pocket-sized devices that are able to communicate inside a building to a low Earth orbit satellite. So very soon, that trillion devices that was expected to be connected by 2030 is going to come to reality because we have the layer that connects us all globally.
So, I mean, help me understand what the impact is. It's a gee whiz stat, and it's amazing that we can communicate with satellites in space. But what does it actually mean to a global business?
I mean, let's talk about an on-the-ground impact. And maybe I'll pick out wildfires, for example. Massive wildfires we've had in North America this year, last year, and indeed across the world we've dealt with that. Before, connectivity outside of major population centers was really limited to satellite dishes, right? A couple of years ago, we had SpaceX that brought Starlink online. That means we could have broadband internet access. Today, your iPhone in the middle of nowhere can send text messages. So in the very near future, and they're doing it, they're testing it right now, we have early warning systems being deployed on a global scale to be able to spot and stop wildfires before they turn into out-of-control issues. So I think that's one practical thing where that global layer of connectivity is going to change how we respond to risk events.
Incredible. You're watching Risk Radar, and today we're exploring how technology and innovation can deliver solutions in asset risk management. And I'd just like to remind you that we welcome input from you yourself. Perhaps you work in risk management, you're an analyst, perhaps you're a plant manager or a chief risk officer. We want to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your experiences. You can go ahead and drop us a comment or reach out. You'll find our contact information around this video. And while I have your attention, don't forget to subscribe for more programs like this one. Okay, let's move along. We're talking about technology and the impact it has on asset risk management. But there's always that aspect of cost, which is, on everyone's mind. How much is this going to cost me? Is it too expensive? Should I just go with what I already have? Anne, maybe I'll turn to you. Technology, it doesn't come cheap, does it?
No, Brian, it does not. But the cost of not implementing technology is much bigger than cost of implementing that technology. And you think about with all the data that you can get from this technology and preventative work, you can actually save money in the long run. So it's yes, you're spending cash up front to put something in, but the savings in the long term are much more astronomical. It allows you to prioritize your capital.
Andy, I know that you've worked with many companies in this area. I mean, if we compare it to the cost of, skilled personnel, technicians, sending them out into the fields, perhaps into the Arctic Circle, down to Latin America to mines, in the Far East, the Middle East. I mean, these, and having housing and all of that. I mean, tell me a little bit about the cost comparisons of a remote scenario and the way we used to do this sort of stuff.
I'll give you a very specific example. No. There are 400,000 miles of aged and deteriorating water infrastructure in North America. Wow. Massive amount. A single valve that breaks could be $250,000 plus for one valve. With a simple sensor to monitor that, we can prevent it before it turns into an issue. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So that value, just in a cheap $99 sensor and a basic monitoring fee, pays back in an enormous way, especially given the scale of unmonitored, unmanaged assets that exist.
Okay, we've been talking to the experts, and now it's time to hear from you on the front line. And this question comes from Chantal. Chantal is VP of Risk at a Canadian mining company, and she asks, what practical effect will AI have on risk managers, and how can I prepare? So we'll go around the table on this one, and maybe you can kick us off. What practical effect will AI have on risk managers, and how can I prepare?
Well, Brian, AI will have a profound impact on risk managers because it is accurate and reliable data information that they can use to prioritize what they need to look at in terms of what they have going on in their organization.
So they can do a better job, quicker, more efficiently.
Yes, and be able to use capital to prioritize managing those risks and be able to communicate effectively because the data is accurate.
And Andy, what have you got?
I think one of the practical effects is happening right now. We see that with insurance companies hiring AI experts because they're using AI to manage the risk exposure to the companies that buy their insurance products. So I think if we're not using AI today to help protect yourself as a customer, those tools are going to be used to manage the risk exposure of the company you're buying those products from.
While I have you, and speaking of insurance, tell me about parametric insurance.
Parametric insurance is really a kind of a fascinating subject, and I would say within the last 4 or 5 years, around that, we've seen companies actually put device-based insurance products on the market. And I'll try to keep it quite simple because it can be a complex subject. It's a pre-adjusted insurance policy. So essentially a device is installed, and I'll use flood as an example. They come in, they understand the impacts of what would happen if water got up to, say, 1 meter. And if it would trigger the device, it would automatically give you a payment within 24 hours. Let's say it gets up to 10 meters, it would trigger another payment within 24 hours. So instead of the traditional process of filing a claim, having an adjuster come out, and then make the claim, understand what the loss is, which could take 6, 8, 12 months, depending on the size of the claim, and if there was any legal aspects involved in it, it's a different way to manage risk and a different way to actually buy insurance.
So let me ask you this, because that sounds like the best news I've heard in a long time. I don't know about you. So is this something that the insurance company is going to come to me with and say, you know, we're bringing you these devices so we can pay you, you know, your claims faster? Or am I going to the insurance company and say, hey, I'm installing these sensors. Can we talk about my policy?
I think it's a mixed bag right now. I think there are insurance companies that are actually have bought device companies, so they're offering these products to their consumers because ultimately the insurer just doesn't want to have a claim. Yeah. So if they can offer you a product that automatically shuts off valves so there's not a leak, that's really great, right, for them because there's not a claim. But I think there's also some pieces of it where maybe if you as a consumer aren't keeping up with things, that maybe there could be some larger impacts. For example, they're using drones. There's an article this happened in Texas where they were flying over roofs to actually risk adjust policies based on how old the AI was determining your roofing was. So I think it's a mix of both, is that you could probably get a discount on your insurance because there's a form that you fill out that says, do you have a leak detector already? You may get a discount to your policy, or your insurer may actually offer you a product that does that.
Can you foresee a time where a company could partner with an insurance company to offset the cost of bringing in, you know, sensors and IoT, that sort of thing?
We absolutely see that. We see within the last 3 or 4 years, more insurers offering resilience credits. So offering some cash to customers to actually make their operations less likely to have a claim. So I think we'll continue to see that as we move forward. Not only devices, but again, the AI to help support effective decision making with the devices, the data that's collected from them.
Well, you heard it here, folks, so go talk to your insurance company. Barry, just to answer our question from Chantal, how is AI going to affect the risk manager?
From a risk management perspective, I think it's a huge benefit towards compliance issues, allowing a risk manager to establish some what-if scenarios. So it's based on some examples of what Andy just referred to, determining if this situation exists or could develop, how best am I going to be suited to manage that? And again, some of the technology will help with determining some of those potential outcomes from some of that stuff. Of course, the other thing is the predictive learning and gathering historical data. Most everything that is identified from, if you're looking at loss history, it's from loss data. And the more you gather that, the more information you have that can support and predict what's likely to happen in the future. Those are some huge benefits, I think, from the risk manager's role, is being able to adapt this technology to help with a lot of that aspect.
So just perhaps, you know, as a last question on this one, Andy, I'll turn to you. If I'm sitting in an office in a corporation and I want to start investigating, learning more about how technology, specifically sensors and IoT, can help me up my game, where can I start?
Call me. I'm in the phone book.
Okay.
I think having a strategy, a good starting point by working with your technology partners is a really good first step. We work with a lot of organizations that are manufacturers or operators of large industrial operations that have a very small technology staff. So it's hard for them to figure out where exactly to start. So I think it's important for companies like us to be able to reach out, educate, and empower those customers to be able to leverage technology like this.
Okay. Thank you all so much. It's great chatting with you today. You've been watching Risk Radar, and I'd like to thank our sponsor, Kogo IoT. Trusted by industry leaders, Kogo safeguards your assets, protects your people, and enhances your operations. And you can learn all about Kogo and their technology at kogo.global. Now, next time, we're going to be discussing disaster response and recovery. If you work on the front lines of risk management, we'd love to hear from you. You just leave a comment, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, go ahead and reach out and get in touch with us. Don't forget to subscribe for more programs just like this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.